So I wanted to ask you, how did Jupiter Jet come to be?
Oh man, it's sort of I had this half-baked idea for a character, and Jason and I were at lunch one day, and I said, I have an idea for a comic book, but it's just a name, and it's Jupiter Jet, and like that was my entire pitch for the comic. And he was like, oh, that's great. It's a girl with a jetpack in the 30s. And I was like, and she has a cat, and she has a brother. And in our issue 5, or at the end of the graphic novel, there's a really big twist that opens up the world. And when we get to do volume 2, it will affect a lot of that. But that came up in our first meeting. So it was just a matter of putting the idea out there. And when so many things spring to mind immediately, for me, that's how I know I'm onto something, when it's not hard to come up with, oh, if this, then what? Kind of that improv rule.
Of course.
And then we had Ben Matsuya, who's our series artist. He drew 5 pages. And we found him because he drew fan art of Jason from when he worked at Screen Junkies.
Oh, wow.
Online. So if you're an artist and you're reaching out to people like that, sometimes it'll get you a job, but you must have sequential samples. Because I reach out to so many people and they don't have sequentials, which I think is insane. Even if it's just you drawing, I don't know, what do people like? The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
Draw your version of those pages. Like, that's so helpful. And then we spent 18 months sending it to people and going around at conventions, like with the pages on an iPad saying, hey, look at this. This is who we are. This is what we do. Because all publishing is very slow, as it turns out. And comics is especially slow if you're working in the diamond system.
Mm-hmm. Because you have to, it's a very interesting process, because you have to go through the whole creation aspect. You have to solicit, you have to get approved for solicits, and then you have to market your book. So by the time you're marketing it specifically to retailers for a long period of time, and then you have to do a hard push, call every retailer for final order cutoff.
Oh man.
And then
I did that thing where we called everyone. That's a learning process.
Yeah, it's brutal, because some people will just pick up the phone and go, who is this? Okay, click.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, like, I wanted to tell you about my new book. Oh, well. And it's part of the process. You have to learn, and you have to learn not to call them on Wednesdays, call them on a day when they have a little bit of time. And
totally.
It's fun.
I kind of feel like it's a rite of passage to do the thing where you get the list of the 500 shops and you call them. And then I think the best thing that we learned was you'll learn very quickly which shops are your allies or which ones want to be your allies, because I get it. Like, we were from Action Lab. It's a smaller publisher. That doesn't always equate to sales. But if somebody wants to go out of their way for you, doing anything you can to help them is valuable, and maintaining that relationship is real. And I'm sure you know that, having been a retailer in charge of a shop. And you'll put yourself out there for the people who really care, because it's that sort of simpatico relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, the more creators do to get a book help, the more you'll want to strive for it, because in reality, the store owners have always been the gatekeepers. They're the ones who are making the recommendation. The employees are the ones, like you and I were talking about. Those are the ones where people find out about a certain book.
Yeah.
And so if you're like, hey, Jupiter Jet, here's why you'll like it, because it's a girl in the 30s and she has a cat, and you're like, oh, okay. So then now whenever a customer comes in, hey, I'm a girl, what would I like? Jupiter Jet. Have you heard of Jupiter Jet? It's this new Action Lab book.
Yeah, a lot of people tell us they give it to young girls who don't want a superhero, even though it is very much like a classic superhero origin, but they're like, I don't want Batman. And I'm like, okay, well, here's this. If your listeners want to know someone who's really great at doing that, you got to watch your interview with Zach Kaplan, because I edited his first book, Eclipse, and man, Zach knows how to work on the ground level, and I actually took a lot of things that I saw him do for our book, so I just wanted to shout him out.
Yeah, Zach is amazing talent, and he's got a good head on his shoulders, and he's making great quality books, and he's doing it with a lot of focus and intensity. So.
And that's what you do. You copy people who are better than you.
That's it. It's funny. You start like. If there's some big boys out there, you start to like play with the big boys, and then whatever it is that'll get you to play with the big boys, all of a sudden you'll look over and you'll be like, oh, I am a big boy. It's so funny, because you are who you kind of associate with.
And speaking back to what we were talking about with how small the community is, and the professional community, it's wild once you start doing something, even before it comes out, who will help you. We had a Nicholas Scott variant on Jupiter Jet and an Art Balthazar variant, because we met them both for 5 minutes and sent them an email. It worked with their schedule, which was very fortunate, but like, they're two huge creators who've been huge for so long, who like didn't have to help us, and they both helped us because we appeared professional and they liked what we were working on. So I would also encourage people to not be afraid to reach out to your heroes, even right at the beginning, because comics is very small.
Comics is very small, and you have to not be afraid of a no. Don't just take it with a grain of salt and say hopefully someone else will say that, take that yes. It's a numbers game. We have to get out there, get a couple no's, and then you'll get a yes eventually, or you can get a yes right away.
And most people are nice.
Most people are nice.
No one's going to tell you that your thing sucks.
You'd be surprised. Some people do.
Right. Let me rephrase that. Most professionals won't tell you that, and if they're implying it, they'll do it in a nice way.
Absolutely.